Good morning, sunshine. Welcome to the morning show based on mental health, mental strength, and overall well-being. I'm your host today, Brandon Lee, alongside my good friend, Carey Pena.
Today, we are going to have some incredible conversations. We're excited to have Sam Bertram, the co-founder of OnePointOne. We've been trying to get him in studio, but he's a busy guy flying all around the world. He's going to talk about being successful and having a purpose-driven life that is fulfilling.
And my question is, how did he discover that at such an early age? Oftentimes people find their life purpose later on in life. He has found it, in like his 30s, maybe even his 20s?
I didn't look at his driver's license, but I know he's on the young side. And also Dr. Trisha Pingle is here in studio, and she is going to be talking about chronic pain, how that impacts our mental health, and some solutions for people.
You know, I'm curious about that conversation. I have a couple of questions because there's always a fine line when we're trying to control the opiate epidemic. And a lot of those folks who are on chronic pain, they do need opiates in order to maintain their pain. And so oftentimes there's a struggle back and forth. You know, a lot of people who suffer from chronic pain are upset about some of the new regulations that have gone into place when it comes to trying to control this opiate outbreak that we have.
Yeah, and she's into natural medicine, so we'll hear from her. And she has a really good list of foods that she suggests that could help.
I love that.
Help our health.
All right, so let's talk about what's going down right now. And this one is a little bit controversial when it comes to behavioral health. The state of California right now is considering paying people to stay sober. All right, now the initial reaction from folks who were like reading those articles and understanding what that law would actually be, they're like, why on earth would you pay somebody, a drug addict money just to stay sober? And a lot of folks who aren't really sure how behavioral health works, a lot of folks are on state access, right? Or if you're in Arizona, you're on access, right? And so the state is paying for these people to go to treatment over and over and over again. And it's a lot of money to send somebody to treatment. Let's say $50,000 to $30,000 for a month. So the state of California is like, well, listen, if we can incentivize somebody who is struggling with drugs and pay them $1,000 a month and they have to do a urine test and all the tests come back negative, then that's actually a cheaper way to get people to stay sober.
It is controversial, and they say that, is it better also to have these incentives and allow people to create these goals for themselves? And I read one company, I believe in Boston, was offering $599 for people who meet these goals. So we'll continue to follow along with that. What do you think about it?
I mean, me personally, I'm all for getting people to stay sober. And if you're a money person, right? If you're just a money person, what costs more, $15,000 or $1,000 a month? Right? There's your give and take.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's an issue with incentivizing people with cash to stay sober.
All right, we're going to go now to our story behind the story, and here is Sam Bertram coming on into the studio with us. Sam is the co-founder of OnePointOne. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you.
So Sam came on my podcast, and not exaggerating, everyone...
And by the way, she keeps talking about you, Sam.
Yes. So, everyone was just blown away by what you had to say because you're so successful. Your company is doing unbelievable. What you talked about, though, is how you have always been, since a young age, mission-driven, and you told me that you were keenly aware of your mortality and wanting to do work with impact. Let's start there.
Unpack that, Sam.
Unpack that for us, Sam.
If you had to live your life 1,000 times in a row, you should make your decisions based upon how boring that same decision would be 1,000 times in a row. So boring is the wrong word, or how unfulfilling or useless your decisions are in that time. So if I was to live my life 1,000 times in a row, when I make the decision to relax or do nothing and stay in bed and watch YouTube or whatever, imagine if I had to do that 1,000 times in a row. I would go back and think, that's not the most productive use of my time. So look, I'm not superhuman. I still have a lot of downtime. There's no doubt about that. But that's at least a useful framework to make decisions in the moment. But at the end of the day, life is so short, and I think that the only currency that has inherent value is somewhere on the spectrum of love. If I exchange with you money, there's value attributed to it. But if I exchange with you some form of love, and of course hate sits on that spectrum of love, if we have that exchange, it's really the only exchange or the only currency with inherent value. So I suppose those are two of the ways I think about my life and my time.
Sam, can you talk to the audience about OnePointOne and what you've built?
Sure.
Because this thing is going, I don't know if this is a real broadcast term, but it's going bananas.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, so back in 2016, my brother and I got together and said, basically, we're going to be dead soon. What can we do that is useful for humanity? We have a good work ethic. We have a lot of blessings in our life. And we came together and we essentially went to the WHO's website and saw what the leading causes of death and suffering are: poor nutrition, poor access to medicine, number one, and number two. And then we essentially tried to figure out, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? And there are lots of solutions to that problem, but and it's kind of a segue to the next segment as well, but the solution is plants. Plants are the solution to poor nutrition. Plants are the solution to poor access to medicine. We can go into either of those if you would like to, but we looked at the traditional farm. So obviously the vast majority of plants that are grown outdoors in soil using sunlight. A significant portion of plants are actually grown inside of greenhouses or glass houses, particularly in the Netherlands. You can see it from space. There's something like 90 million square meters of greenhouse space in the Netherlands. But then we came across the concept of indoor farming, vertical farming, fully indoor with no sunlight. And there were so many value propositions associated with it: 99% less water, 99% less land, zero pesticides, zero soil degradation. All of these value propositions hadn't hit the market yet. And so after doing the whole analysis about, I won't bore you with the details, we figured out if we can develop a fully automated system to produce plants inside of warehouses and we can distribute that technology around the world, we can significantly impact the number 1 and 2 leading causes of death and suffering on planet Earth. So that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Raised almost $60 million. We have
In your first round of seed funding, right?
well, there were multiple rounds, but yeah, first business, I suppose. But yeah, this was my first job, and I'll tell you a couple of stories if you want to know about how unknowledgeable I was at the beginning of all of this. But yeah, we've raised almost $60 million. We have 80 employees in California and Arizona, and we have a farm in California, another farm in Arizona that just turned on. It's about 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. So yeah, our core competency is developing automated plant production technology, and our mission is to unleash the power of plants on human health.
And you, from your website, share the mission statement. What your goal is, how many people do you want to feed?
We want to feed 1.1 billion people.
Wow.
And that's not, I mean, he's on his way to making solutions so that these big, lofty goals can become reality.
Yeah. We can get there. It'll take time. Don't get me wrong. We're not going to do that in the next 20 minutes. But
the fact that your goal is to feed 1 billion people through this process, right? Kind of is aquaponics, right?
Yeah, it's aeroponics. It's a slight
Aeroponics,
variation.
okay.
Yeah.
Because aquaponics has been around for a little bit of time. Can you
time.
just school me the difference between aquaponics and aeroponics?
Sure. So there's soil-based, and then there's hydroponics, which is kind of like a category. Aquaponics sits underneath that, and aeroponics sits underneath that. Hydroponics means water doing the work. It's a Greek word: hydro, water, ponos, work, water doing the work. So the roots are drinking from water. In the case of hydroponic or aquaponic, the roots are drinking from a volume of water, like a rose in a vase.
Right.
In aeroponic, the roots are actually drinking from a mist. So when you go to the produce section at Safeway and that mist
is coming down, it's actually
it's just a little more complicated than that. We have to realize that there's never been a better time to be alive for almost all of humanity. That's the first thing we have to be is grateful, is the generations before us have lived through absolute treachery and pain and horrendous conditions to get us all here. So we live in an incredible time, an incredibly prosperous time, as you identified. But at the same time, it is striking that 821 million people don't have access to food.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a nice balance, because I live my days being grateful to wake up in a warm bloody bed, and spend much of the rest of the day trying to build a business to help people. But I'm one cog in a much larger machine. I love what I do and appreciate everyone that works with me on this project. But yeah, hopefully we're on the way up.
Sam, thank you so much for being here. See, I tell everyone about you. I'm the best PR agent that you've never had to pay. I appreciate you so much, and we'll continue to follow along with your journey. Thank you so very much. And now we want to share a segment with you, an interview I did with the CEO of Child Crisis Arizona, Tori Taj. We talked about the impact that safe and supportive foster homes have on the mental health of children and families. Take a look.
I received a letter from this child's great-grandparents, and I could share some of the letter with you. Dear Child Crisis Arizona, thank you all for doing everything that you do for foster kids in Arizona. We found out about your organization because we have a great grandson in your group home. Your care and wonderful staff at the Elmwood House helped our great grandson and has changed his life. You are truly changing lives. I can see it in my great grandson. He's learned to trust again. He's beginning to feel like a normal kid. Because of that, a life of a boy that came to you over a year and a half ago, alone, frightened, neglected, hurt, and abused, living on the street and out of contact with us, his extended family, has become a successful student in school, a member of the school basketball team, a happy 14-year-old now who's learned to trust again. He's a boy who has hope again. You've given him the opportunity at Child Crisis Arizona to grow into a fine young man and not be defined by the neglect and abuse under which he once lived. You're truly changing lives. Two ever grateful great grandparents.
How does that impact you?
For me, it was validation of the work that we do each and every day.
What struck me most about that is that line saying that he doesn't have to be defined by this neglect and abuse. It is breaking that cycle of trauma and giving these children hope that they can be something in their lives.
That's exactly what it is. We don't define our services by saying our kids are sex trafficked. They are victims of abuse. Yes, all of those things can happen. And the emotional abuse that they've endured for years, it can change. It can change by having people care about you, having those deep connections, having the consistency of people in your life, and having people being that positive force that you can do well in school and you are worthy and you are an incredible young man or child.
Tori said that she read that letter to her staff members and they were all just crying.
The work that they're doing over at Child Crisis Arizona is hugely impactful. It's hugely impactful in many ways. First off, these kids need to be loved on. And, you know, for whatever reason, whatever circumstances, they don't have parents right now, currently in their life. And so Child Crisis Arizona really is, they're stepping into that void and they're filling that void because every child needs a mother or a father. They need that love, that kind of love and compassion. And they're stepping into that. And I love the fact that this family wrote them a letter.
Know.
And I'm going to just share something really quick. It reminds me when I celebrated 5 years of recovery that I went back to the hospital in Los Angeles and I gave my 5-year token to the nurses who had saved my life and a letter saying thank you for not giving up on me and giving me a second chance at life. Because what it did is gave them almost a shot in the arm to continue to do the work they do. And that letter that this family wrote to Tori and her staff will give them that shot in the arm to keep helping other kids out there. I love that.
And I loved that you shared that story about your personal experience because I remember when that happened.
Yes.
And you told me that the nurse indicated to you how grateful she was because they
never come back.
They never hear from people and how the story ends.
Yeah, they did. They told me, they're like, Brandon, people don't come back. Yeah. So I love that story.
Now our Mind, Body, Spirit segment, and Dr. Tricia Pingle is here on set with us. We wanted to have you in studio to talk to us about chronic pain. You deal with a lot of patients who come to you. What type of pain do they come to you with the most, complaining about the most?
Well, I think in general, when you look at pain, it kind of helps to define that. You know, it's real easy to look at acute pain and say, well, I injured my elbow, it swelled up, went down. When we're talking about chronic pain, we're looking at a couple things. Number one, we're always looking at inflammation. There's always inflammation somewhere. So as far as where is it, completely different in each person. Could be systemic. When you look at fibromyalgia, for example, people have chronic low back pain. That's very common. Even you could loop in headaches or chronic migraines, you know, as pain. And there's also a physiological and psychological aspect to pain. You know, I delivered my babies at home in my kitchen.
Brave.
Without pain management. My pain
Did you do that on purpose or
I
just by
did.
chance? Oh, it was on purpose.
Totally.
I just had to feel I had to ask.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
actually planned it, if you can believe it, and I did it twice, right? But you know, when people say, well, I have a high pain threshold or I have a low pain threshold, there is actually some truth to that in the way that our mind interprets pain. And therefore, in a lot of chronic pain therapy, you have to bring in that emotional component because parts of the brain are actually involved in our, I guess, interpretation of pain in addition to the inflammation. So it's quite a process to find where it's all coming from. But I think that's the starting point. You start somewhere and you investigate and you start working on that process to relieve it.
You turn on the TV these days and there are ads for fibromyalgia all over, and it's immediately sending them to the doctor's office to get an opiate, right? To get a painkiller or a pain reliever in that way. What I'm really excited to have you on today is talking about, as we say, gut health is mental health, but gut health really, the things we put in really impacts the way our bodies behave and how our bodies feel, and introducing more of a naturopathic way to help folks who do suffer from chronic pain.
Yeah, well, anyone who's a parent has taken a baby to a doctor, and the first thing they ask is what are the inputs and the outputs? What are they putting into the body and what's being eliminated? And then for some reason, when we become adults, we stop asking that question. You know, but really, it's not really out of the box naturopathic therapy. It's just going back to really looking at what does the body need. It needs proper nutrition. It needs stress reduction. Right? We live in a ridiculously stressful society, and that just causes more inflammation and exasperates anything else that might be going on. So I think it's actually quite simplistic, but yet very difficult for people to commit to, especially if they are just being handed scripts. By the way, the top script for fibromyalgia typically is an antidepressant.
Wow.
Bringing the
didn't know
mind
that.
and the connection of the neurotransmitters of the
pain to
mind
the pain.
into the pain. So it's actually changing the way that they look at life and look at pain.
Let's talk about some of the recommendations that you give to your patients. So I read your blog and you list these as the top recommendations to help fight chronic pain. Ginger, garlic, cherries, turmeric, hot peppers, leafy greens, blueberries, extra virgin olive oil. So talk to me about...
Serve me up a dish. That all sounds
yeah,
really
yeah.
great, actually.
You know, talk to me about how much food can really help us combat chronic pain.
100%. And as you noticed, all of those are plant-based foods.
Yeah.
There were no hamburgers or pizzas or chicken wings or whatever on that list. But the bottom line is plants have the medicine. They're antioxidants, all of those, potent antioxidants, potent anti-inflammatories. Those not only reduce pain and inflammation, but they help the immune system, they help your brain, they help you have a great mood. Those are also mood boosting foods. In fact, blueberries, I think it's like in 30 minutes after consumption, your serotonin levels
Oh,
go
wow.
up.
I got you
Blueberries.
some
Sounds like go to the
blueberries
store and get us
not
blueberries
long
for our kitchen.
But they're all working together to actually benefit the body. And I always talk to my patients about when you put something in your mouth, think about what it does for you. What are you getting out of it? You know, and that's where a lot of those foods come in. And I could go on with another 100 foods, and
bet.
they all have some sort of impact.
So what do we have here?
Well, I brought a little sample from my supplement line. I think one of the ones primarily for inflammation would be the turmeric, which turmeric is a fantastic
Love
plant.
it.
And you can actually buy the root at Sprouts or Whole Foods and make your own golden milk. If you haven't tried golden milk, that's one to look up for sure. But you can also take it as a supplement. And what's nice about it is it actually can work almost like an ibuprofen when you're in acute pain. Zinc, just minerals in general. I mean, we are so deficient. And let me tell you why we're deficient. We're deficient because the stress on our body slows our digestion. If you're in the woods and you run from a bear, you don't digest your food, right? So if you're constantly running, the rest and digest phase is slowed. And when it's slowed, we have less nutrition, less absorption, more medical problems, and more inflammation and more pain. So I brought a total stress support, which is about calming down that body and focusing on the rest and digest, along with minerals, turmeric, and some vitamin D, which is so important just in general for our overall health.
There were a few other therapies that I saw that you recommend to your patients. Can you talk briefly about one or a few of these? The hot and cold therapy, and then the EFT tapping. I've been hearing a lot about that. And then also you talk a lot about meditation.
Yeah, I mean, the meditation, you have to calm the body to be well. We cannot run in a fight or fight sympathetic state all the time. It produces fear and that causes more stress on the body. We have to calm our body. So meditation is a practice that I recommend everybody work on, and it is absolutely something you need to work on.
Start with 3 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And then work to 4.
Can you make 3 minutes? I'm at about a minute right now, but you know, I try to do it regularly. The tapping is unbelievable. There is so much research on acupuncture and tapping. And part of it is that it actually calms the anxiety and allows the body to focus on intention.
Just very quickly, can you show the audience what you mean when you say tapping?
Yeah, so you have to pick some sort of intention. You know, I had a bad day today, but I love myself and I'm fulfilled. And then you move on to the next section, and then you move on to the next section. And
My
then
trauma
the next.
therapist had me do this in session one time.
Yeah.
She's a huge proponent of it.
And you keep saying it 3 times every time you tap, whatever your intention is. And I think there is such a great link between our mind and our body. And so often in conventional medicine, we separate those. We don't put them together, and it's so important.
Hot and cold therapy, are you talking about the ice bath?
Yeah, hot, cold, you know, cutting off blood flow, bringing blood flow. Cutting off blood flow, bringing blood flow. Also moving toxins through the body is another aspect of that.
And they say when you wake up in the morning, do not take a hot shower, take an ice cold shower.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
I was just saying, no, I refuse to do
does
it,
not
but that's what
seem
the experts
comfy.
tell me to do, and I refuse. I'm like, I'm not waking up and jumping into an ice cold shower.
No, me
As
neither.
we wrap up, can you just leave the audience with one final kind of word of inspiration? So many people suffer from chronic pain, and that obviously impacts your mental well-being. What is your final word of inspiration to people?
You know, I think the key is to just wake up and start somewhere. Just every day, wake up with a good intention, say something positive to yourself in the mirror, figure out what your goal is in that moment, and not spending so much time on regret, what I could do, what I will do all the time, but where am I right now? And what can I do right now to make a positive impact in my life and everyone else's life?
The power of now. Thank you so
Power of
much,
now.
Dr.
Thank you
Pingle.
so
and
much.
the 2 apps I like, Daily Calm and Daily Mindfulness. I have both of those on my phone. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And now we want to go to our sunshine story. We always like to leave on a bright note because that's what we're all about. So this is super cool. Our producer Christina told us about this. The Tempe Writers Forum, they really lift people up and share the expression of writing and how important it is to put your words down. And you know, whether it's a journal or a more formal piece of writing, in this particular Writers Forum, it was a competition, and they had it for high school, for college age, and for adults. And actually, Christina's mom won for her personal essay, and she wrote about her husband, Christina's father, who is walking through a journey with dementia and Parkinson's. And Christina told me that when her mom read her work, everyone was crying. I mean, it's just the power of words. And sometimes we bottle those up inside us, and you don't realize how beautiful it can be when you actually just write it down.
Well, that's actually the reason why one of the reasons why they say journaling is so important. It's letting out that emotion and letting out that stored energy in our bodies and just putting pen to paper so you release it rather than holding it in.
Yes.
So just even journaling on a daily basis allow you just to kind of release emotion, release some of that energy day in and day out so that you're not a ticking time bomb, you know, and just suppressing so much stuff.
Because so much of what we talk about on this show is trauma.
Yes.
And identifying our traumas and learning how to release some of those traumas.
Well, just being even married to somebody who is walking through dementia, if it's the wife and the husband's, walking through dementia, it's traumatic for the wife.
The caregivers.
The caregivers absolutely need to take care of themselves too.
Well, thank you everyone for being with us for Good Morning Sunshine. We appreciate you. You can always email us information on your screen if you'd like to be a part of our show.
Yep, and don't forget to subscribe to us over on our YouTube channel. You'll notice there's a little alarm bell there. Click that alarm bell. We'll send you a notification every time we upload a new edition of Good Morning Sunshine.
Yeah, take good care, everyone. Take care of yourself and all those around you. Thanks for being with us.